As I said earlier, not a very cheery message. Jesus is talking about terrible things happening on earth. For many centuries, the last Sunday after Pentecost and the first Sunday of Advent had the same gospel. This had the same message. That's because there was a continuity between the old and the new, what had happened in the past and what was now about to happen in the present. And the reason for that was the continuity of God and His presence among us. God is always there, even when there are terrible tribulations that Jesus talks about. We may think that some of those things are already beginning to happen. The terrible events of fire and flood, famine and plague around the world. The nations, all the nations of the world, in an uproar. Wars, slaughter, human cruelty, and the destruction of the planet that we are living on. All of that is happening now. But Jesus says it's not over yet. There may be more or there may be less, but it's happening. The things that are happening all around us have a kind of reflection of what happens inside of people. There are people who at this time of year in a special way find things to be difficult. There are inner pains and difficulties that people have to bear. And that's why we as a worshiping community come together and we light a candle. There is darkness everywhere in the world, but we light a candle against the darkness to signify that we know that the light of Christ is present. It is here, and we can depend upon it. The world around us is in darkness, the natural world. It's dark outside. But just think, in 3 weeks from now, the sun will start coming back in the other direction, and the days will get longer. That's a sign in the natural world of what is going on in our hearts, in our worship. That sometimes the worst darkness comes just before dawn. The darkness will give way to light. That's the great message of our faith. But what Jesus says in the gospel, and what St. Paul told us in his letter, be vigilant, watch, stay awake, be careful, think about the things that are really important in your life, the things that count. Now, it's been said many times, and it bears repetition, that these weeks before Christmas are full of so much external noise, the presence of commercialism, drowning out all that we think of in our worship. And that's why it's so important when we leave church today to keep thinking about the themes that have come to us, the light of Christ coming into the world, the importance of our faith, so that we aren't snowed under by the things around us that are so distracting. It's a time for us to think more carefully about ourselves and our lives. The purple vestments indicate a kind of a penitential area in our lives. It's a time when we think more carefully about ourselves, about our relationship to God and one another. We'll be having we'll be engaging in our parish, once again, what we call the Advent conspiracy. The conspiracy of our Christian faith that stands up against the distractions of the world. There'll be many more things that we can say about that. But what a blessing it is to have a season like this, a time when we can gather into our hearts and minds the most basic and fundamental, most important things about our lives and about how our faith brings itself into our lives. So let's think about those things. Let's take this time, these few weeks that go by so fast as we prepare for the coming of Christ into the world and into our hearts. Let's be thankful in this Holy Eucharist, in which we offer God our praise and our thanksgiving for all his gifts. We recently celebrated the secular feast of Thanksgiving. Every time we come together for this celebration, it's a thanksgiving. Eucharist, as you know, means thanksgiving. So let us give thanks today and in all the days that are coming before the birth of our Lord, and be glad and rejoice that he gives us this opportunity to think about him and ourselves and one another in the light and the love of Christ.